If you don't recognize me, because I don't think this class has seen me without my, mask on, my pandemic gear. I'm Dr. Carpenter. I'm your English instructor. Anyway, today, while I'm kind of waiting to see if anybody shows up for virtual office hours, I had a few minutes and I thought, while I'm waiting, I would record a quick video with some tips for thesis statements. So this isn't some sort of like holistic, this is all you would ever need to know about thesis statements kind of video, but it is a list of like quick tips, sort of organizing principles to help you get a sense of what we're looking for in a thesis statement. I know you've already done some work with these, and the work that you've done is something you can build on here, right? So we're kind of refining, and I want to think about thesis statements in terms of how different constructions of thesis statements fit in terms of different types of academic essays and different types of writing, okay? So that's kind of like the next step. Like this is the tips video, and then we've got kind of a next steps kind of, okay, and here's how you plug that into different types of writing kind of follow up. So anyway, I made this as a list of should statements, and I've kind of adapted it from a video and guide that I made for some students, I think last semester. It all runs together, but not too long ago. Anyway, so thesis statements should, a list of thesis statements a list of things that thesis statements should do. Your thesis statement should not come as a surprise. This is the part that you're going to be working on in the drafting exercise on Wednesday, okay? So the thesis statement should not come as a surprise. It's the introduction to your essay that introduces your thesis statement and makes sure that it doesn't come from out of left field. It doesn't take your readers totally by surprise. They're prepared when they get to your thesis statement to understand it not as a given or as something that's totally obvious. If it were, you wouldn't need the rest of your essay to support that thesis statement. But you want your introduction to prepare your readers to receive your thesis statement as a debatable but reasonable claim that is relevant. It's not from out of the blue. It doesn't just fly in and hit them. It has some context, okay? So they're ready to understand it and understand why this might be something they would want to know more about. And I always say that this happens, the way that you construct that introduction to lead to a thesis statement, is in terms of two sort of elements that work hand in hand. So the first one is the audience you hope to reach, and the second one is the point you want to make. The point you want to make is the thing you're going to convince them of. In one sense, that is the thesis statement, is the thesis. The statement part is the audience you hope to reach because you tailor your wording and your approach, you tailor that to whomever you are trying to reach with the point you hope to make. Okay? So that goes also to the questions of formality and register and complexity and what you would assume your audience already knows. At the sentence level, that's in your thesis statement. But, a sentence only has so many words in it, right? So that also, that approach, that thought about, okay, who is going to be reading this and what do those people need to know in order to understand my thesis as a reasonable yet debatable claim, that kind of strategy and thinking is what informs and structures your introduction to the essay, but it's the introduction that introduces your thesis statement. So this is something we'll talk about more later. I'm not so much concerned about this next thing I'm about to tell you. I'm not as concerned about that on this set of drafts as I am sort of it's an element that I want us to talk about going forward in terms of strategic choices. Somebody asked today if I was going to insist on third-person formal voice only for this class. It's a good question, and the answer is going to depend to some degree on audience and how you are imagining, where your paper is going to fit within a larger scheme of academic discourse and in terms of genres of academic writing and so forth. The easy default answer is normally academic writing is in the third person, but there are some times when it's appropriate to use a different voice, a different perspective, etc., etc. But if we kind of take the baseline, no special conditions apply assumptions, then in that case your thesis statement is not about you, is the way that I put it in my little handout here. And by that I mean there's a tendency sometimes to structure thesis statements and sort of soften them with a an I believe or an I think or an I feel statement. The I feel one really bothers me, but if you think of your thesis statement, I have to get something out of my hands over here. I have to talk with my hands and they're full. If you conceive of your thesis statement as the thing that your essay is going to prove, right? Then logically, in most cases, putting an I think or an I believe or an I feel or whatever in front of it sets you up to be proving that you think so. And that's probably not what you want to do actually in the body of your essay. Probably, in most cases, you want to prove that this thing that you do in fact think, okay, it's not like I think you don't think it, but you want to prove that it's actually true or that it's actually plausible or that the policy you are proposing is actually a good idea, not that you think it's a good idea, right? So if I'm making the case to the English department that we need to add an essay in English 112, I'm not, but let's say that I were going to. My case, my thesis statement would not be, I believe that we should add an essay in English 112. My thesis statement would be, the English department at the University of North Alabama should add an essay to English 112 because XYZ reasons, right? My point is, I don't want to end up proving that I think so. I want to end up proving that it's actually a good idea. And structuring your thesis statement so that it doesn't have that kind of softening, I believe, I feel, I think lead in, helps you to set that up correctly. There are times when it makes sense rhetorically to have the I think or the whatever in front, but at a baseline, you kind of want to be thinking of your thesis statement as the thing your essay is going to prove, and way most often, you're not going to prove that you think something, you're going to prove that the thing you actually do think is true. Okay. So we'll talk more about this in terms of rhetorical strategies, next week and the week after. There's one other should statement for thesis statements, and that is your thesis statement should be precise. So when you've got this overly general language, especially with nouns that are abstract kind of concept words, you end up putting words on the page and making statements that are totally plausible, but there's nothing for us to tie them to, so they don't have enough specifics. When I say that your essay needs to be a reasonable but debatable claim, it's got to be specific enough for us to actually debate whether it makes sense in a given context, right? So when we've got these really generalized thesis statements, they often are reasonable but are not debatable. So an example that I have seen many, many versions of is children use technology too much and should use it less, or, Okay, this sentence stands in need of 3 separate definitions, and each one of them is necessary to getting real communicative use out of that sentence. So children, what's our age range? Technology, are we talking about shovels, or are we talking about Nerf guns, or are we talking about smartphones? Well, most of the time it is something like a smartphone, but the point is, technology can mean lots of things. You want to nail it down for a thesis statement. I don't think anybody in this class is actually writing about this topic, but as an example, right? And then too much, right? Children use technology too much. What is too much? How do we decide? Right? So each one of those terms has to be defined before the sentence is really conveying meaning to the reader, okay? Other than, we know you think a class of people who are kind of younger than us use something undefined, and you think they do more than they should of it. Well, okay, but we need the beats, okay? So what I want to point out here is that statement, children use technology too much, it's not a bad thing to come up with, if you're in the brainstorming stages, or you're kind of playing around with ideas, but by the time you get to a refined thesis statement, you want something that's more precise than that, so you want something like K through 3rd graders should only have access to smartphones for 2 hours a day, or something, okay? So watch out for that one, because after the sort of softeners, like the I feel and I think and so on, that's probably the most common tripping point that I see with thesis statements. And you want to be careful and clear in what you're conveying to your reader. So just to sum up, thesis statements should not be a surprise. Prepare your readers with your introduction. They shouldn't be about what's inside your head, even if you end up rhetorically needing to put personal language in there. Try drafting your thesis statement that doesn't have it. See what you come up with. And then the third thing is, be sure that your thesis statement is precise. Nail down all of the, however many terms you have in there that are working together, nail them all down. All right? And that's it for now. Good luck. Talk to you soon.